mainly because my business partner doesn't want anyone knowing where she lives because she's a politician and she's a right winger in a very left wing place, so she doesn't want anyone to know where we are. We are joined tonight by my friend Dan, who I haven't seen in several months, and online because he didn't really like the book at book club.
Yeah, right. We were reading was a Demon of Our Own Design, about the Wall Street. I had a hard time kind of getting into it and everything, and I did kind of page through it, but it didn't work for me. But before I make out like this is some really principled intellectual thing, this kind of started in October, and the reality is I'm from New England. I wanted to watch the Patriots on Sunday. We went to the Super Bowl.
That's more than
I mean, look, I could sit here and give you all these grand reasons, but I remember saying, to a friend of mine, I said, look, I really miss everybody on book club, but I'm sitting on a stage right now, I've got what I wanted. Trump's my president, Mike Vrabel's my coach. People I actually trust are running things right now. I think I just want to watch a little football. But if anybody,
how upset were you with the Super Bowl result?
I think of everybody a lot, and I'm looking forward to when a new book starts and coming back.
Yeah, and the next book is The Israel Lobby.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's going to be interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Now, how did you take that Patriot Super Bowl? Because a lot of people I'm talking to were not shocked by it. I was I'm used to the Patriots from back in the day when just dominating the thing. Yeah. And I am a Patriots fan because I do like to worship the great evil empire because I'm
good
part
for
of the British
you.
Empire. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Super Bowl itself, obviously disappointed. I wasn't entirely shocked. It kind of went. And I do have to say, I don't think people around here, certainly no one I knew, were entirely shocked either. They knew it was kind of a miracle run to get there and that we were going up a much better team. We had a path to win, but it's it wasn't unpredictable that what happened, took place. So, yeah, speaking of me being in New England and you're in some left-wing place, it's occurring to me I wonder if you're right down the street from me and I don't even know it here right now.
No.
Or you could be halfway around the world. The fascination and the drama here is really adding to this now. So
no, I'm still in my hometown right now, though. I was talking to a friend of mine because I have this grand trip that I've been putting together in June to visit a bunch of people I've met through this thing called Two Way. And it's Mark Halperin has a podcast. I don't know if you know who that is.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he has a podcast. What happened organically is they created 2 shows by various members of that community because he does the live Zoom. And after every episode, a bunch of people get together on Zoom and hang out for a couple hours.
Really?
Yeah, it's an interesting experience. So, and it's very different than when we do book club because book club is everyone is in that certain prism, the Barnes, Barris world, where I get a lot more broader perspective from people who are more normal Americans, who may not like those people or that perspective on things. So I get a much more broader concept. And we also have some left-wing people who show up as well.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, and again, when you talk about the normal American, I think some of it is just people who aren't even aware of all of our favorite pundits and podcasts.
Yeah.
In only a handful of cases, even recognize the names and everything, and in hearing how they're reacting to things, and which is actually, speaking of one of our favorite podcasters, that's why I would listen to Rich, because his job is to talk to those people and find out what they're thinking. So
No, I was on a podcast last Thursday night with one of the community members of the book club invited me on, and Rich was his opening act, and then I was going to be the closer, but Rich didn't leave, so the 3 of us ended up having a thing all night long, and Owen's typing in the chat, who I've had on a couple times on the show since then, and we had a whole episode because I was what is with these Christian Zionists? Because this doesn't make any sense to me from a biblical perspective. And he kind of told me what was going on and that. And okay, yeah, I'm a very lay Christian. I go for the fellowship. I'm not as theologically sound as he is. So I brought him on and he's oh, okay, yep. Okay, this is why I could detect the heresy. I just didn't know why it was heretical.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't dug deep into Christian Zionism or anything like that. But I mean, just speaking as a Catholic, it struck me it's kind of weird. And from this, I
Hmm.
mean that from this sense. So let's take our mutual friend from book club, Elon.
Yeah,
A Jewish man. If he tells me he's a Zionist, that makes perfect sense. It's like that's a
yeah,
logical extension of what you believe. When
mhm,
someone says I'm a Christian Zionist, I'm like, okay, this just doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
Like as a Catholic, I believe the church is the new Israel, and my thoughts
Exactly.
flow
That's
from
what
that. So
that's what
yeah,
Owen told me as well. He's like, we're in the Holy Catholic Church. The Israel is, you know, is the new church. Is Israel is for us is the church. It's not
right,
a
exactly. It's a
particular
reflection
piece
of
of real estate in
of
the
a
Middle East.
pre-existing theological position. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened with somewhat with some of the problems that Charlie Kirk ran into, because he was going around telling all these kids, "Go read the Bible. It'll work out for you." And then the kids were reading the Bible, realizing this is not what the message of the gospel of Jesus is. This is to support Israel. It's the church. So he was getting questioned repeatedly about when he was
Hmm.
during his Turning Point USA events, where like the kids would come up and say, "This is not what is in the book. Are you sure that you want this is what it is?" And like, yeah,
Yeah, and we know in his last days he was taking a lot of pressure, from the Israel lobby too. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. I don't think the Israel lobby killed him. I think it's like corrupt crony Arizona politicians might have something more to do with
Well,
it.
that was interesting. The first time it happened, I just said the first thought that went through my mind is like cartels. Because
Yeah.
I felt like you've got a governor election coming up in Arizona. We know what they did 4 years ago to rig it.
Mhm.
Like it's going to be harder this time, to do it. And yeah, that was the first thought that went through my mind.
Yeah. It's just like Rich has told us about what happens in that state, and it just seemed to me like, you know, the Israelis were starting to pull their money out, and that the whoever's at Turning Point, there's a couple of shady actors who were on that board,
Okay.
and they
Yeah.
didn't want to lose that money.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
That's been my personal theory. So I think some of these people who are around Candace Owens are detecting it, but they're so focused on their hatred of Israel, they can't get past. It might just be a couple of greedy, corrupt senators in the state legislature.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because yeah, that has been one of the. In fact, I wrote, for my Substack, Corned Beef
Mhm.
Catholicism, I wrote a post recently, talking about Israel, and I said like, hey, look, I was, schlepping for Pat Buchanan back in the day. Like, I'm very familiar with all the
Mhm.
criticisms of Israel, but some of this is starting to get kind of a little over the top, where it's like
Mhm.
it's gone beyond saying Israel has too much influence on the United States, and like we have people. I mean, Candace is one. I think Tucker seems to be starting to lean that way. That almost really seem to think Iran is the good guy in the Middle
Yeah,
East. I'm kind of like, okay, like let's just pull it back here for a second. Like,
yeah,
I
like
want Israel to win that war. I just don't want to be a part of fighting it. Is
yeah,
all.
yeah, exactly. For me, like the format of this show, it's of course this is the return of Dan Ask Questions. So why don't you guys start asking me questions, and I'll tell you what I think.
Okay, I'm going to start off with a question that's going to seem so obvious and maybe even stupid in light of the news
Hmm.
dominating the world today. From a military standpoint, how big of a deal is the U.S. involvement in Iran actually?
Uh, hmm. Military standpoint, this has been a brilliant operation. However, you have tied down a lot of your forces into one particular area. And if a crisis breaks out somewhere else, you'll be hard pressed to cover it.
Okay.
That being said, I think there's a lot of global coordination between the people who normally might have exploited this, the Russians, the Chinese, a few other actors, where they want the same results as America. So they aren't pushing it because they want Iran taken off the table for their own reasons.
Okay, so that actually seems to kind of be an answer to one of the other questions I had is like, is Russia kind of like what we'll just call a silent partner of the US in this whole thing?
Yeah, Russia is very mad because Chechnya. You got to remember, Iran was one of the primary backers of the Chechen civil war that Putin and the Russians had to put down. That's actually the first special military operation. I was a little surprised that when Scott Ritter says, "Oh, well, Ukraine is the first special military operation ever," and I'm like reading an article at the time in a magazine saying, "No, the Chechnyan situation was a special military operation." So that's the situation. I think Russia is uh, when They had a military alliance deal with the Iranians, but when America started attacking, they pulled an Italy in World War One style situation. Oh, you didn't read the fine print here on this section where we get to terminate the contract, and they pulled out. So they've been allowing like mullahs and mid-rank IRGC guys to flee into Russia because that's kind of Russia's thing always over the time. But for the most part, Russia's not been the big backer here. They are pissed that they had to deal this 10-year long or how many year long civil war in one of their breakaway provinces because of Iran and other actors who wanted to make that happen. So after Assad fell in Syria and they made a deal to keep their base with the new Syrian government, Russia is like, maybe it's time to kick Iran to the curb right now.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I mean, if we view the, geopolitics as we probably should through like a mafia type relationships, Iran is like, if to pull from The Godfather, Iran's like Sollozzo. They're kind of the troublemaker that almost everybody might prefer to have gone, but only one of the families actually has the will and the interest to actually take them out, but the other ones might just kind of stand by and just say like, okay, yeah, we're not really going to miss him. And our interests can be maybe dealt with somebody more reasonable in charge. So where do you see China falling into this situation? Do they
China's the one who's really upset because especially with their military contracts, because China's like, why isn't our radar working? Why isn't any of our stuff working? We've been putting all this equipment into Iran in preparation for the defense, and they're a major oil supplier for us. I mean, Russia's also making a lot of money now, more money because China can't just subsidize their war economy because Iran's been taken off the table. For Russia, they're getting to sell their oil at a higher price point than they were before the war started. So Russia has been pleased in that regard.
Now, I had heard that like China only gets like 6% of its oil from Iran. That said, I don't know if I should use the word only. 6% of a budget is a notable amount.
Yeah.
So basically and I'm also like, I read the Epoch Times headlines like multiple times every day. Of course, they cover China a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem like that whatever the percentage is like, this is really taking a toll on China, that they haven't had oil come in there for 50 days or so now.
Mm-hmm.
And that this is kind of rattling what was already an economy that had problems.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost Venezuela, and then they lost access to Iran. But all these countries, you would think that would be wanting to force the opening of the straits. South Korea, Japan. I understand Japan has these constitutional issues that would prevent it from sending its fleet over there, but no one seems to be in a big rush to open the Straits of Hormuz.
Interesting. It's almost like they know that it's taking a toll in China. Is that where we're leading with this?
And possibly it's taking a toll on a lot of bad actors. I don't know if you ever heard the City of London conspiracy theory.
No, interesting.
Okay, so in London, you have the metropolitan UK city, but there is actually a 1 square mile block inside the city called the City of London, and it's a feudal territory where all their banks are.
Okay. All right.
And so because the banks are registered in this 1 square mile territory, they're immune to, they only have to report to the king. They can bypass a bunch of regulations set down by Parliament because they're not reporting to Parliament. They report to the king.
Okay.
And so what has been postulated out
there. Keep explaining it to me like I'm 6 years old here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure I piece all this together
that basically they use the intelligence agencies, especially in the United States, in Wall Street. Once upon a time, they made an alliance with Wall Street, and what's happening is they use the fact that they have access to the United States 18 intelligence agencies to make bets, shorts and longs, because they know things are going to happen before the rest of us do.
Okay,
and they can make $1 billion on a deal because that. And one of their favorite tools of this control or money-making operation is that Israel and Iran will go shoot at each other.
Okay.
They have advanced knowledge of that, and they'll put down shorts on and puts on stocks going long
Okay.
or short to make their money. And that's the theory behind that. And I think I just call them the financialists. Other people in the space call it the City of London, because I think a lot of different groups of people are making money on this. And why do I think this? Because if I were an evil billionaire douchebag, I'd probably do the same thing.
I know it's like once if you just pretend that you didn't have any ethical
Mhm.
boundary whatsoever and just say like, okay, would you do this if you were in that situation?
If I were Emperor Palpatine, yeah, I'd be doing this.
Yeah, that's it's like suddenly it all makes sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
right. Okay, that's and of course, regarding the flow of oil and everything, one of the things I'm kind of wondering about is, you mentioned Venezuela, which is a huge piece of this whole thing. Are we looking at Trump basically trying to boldly revamp the whole supply chain of oil throughout the world at this point?
Among other things, yes.
Okay. All right, because you did your show with your Iran panel a few days ago, which
Mhm.
fabulous, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. And you talked about how like Trump making this move to kind of as part of kind of resetting the chessboard
Mhm.
basically in the Middle East. And so would that be that so that would be a part of it, like altering the flow of oil where this maybe we aren't I guess we aren't dependent on the Strait of Hormuz per se anyway, but us getting control of Venezuela, Greenland, all of this is so that's all that would be all connected together then, right?
Yeah, I think that is. I'm just not too sure they're quite as organized as some of the people I talk to in this sphere think. They're like, I think there might be much more of a reactive cultural situation going on. It's not. I don't. I'm not convinced that there's some master grand plan. I do feel there's a lot of, especially with Trump, there's a lot of flying by the seat of his pants kind of a
Mhm.
situation. But I do feel that this is the general scheme. We break the control over the idea that we allow 1/4 of all the world's energy to flow through this 2 mile strait is insane. And this
Okay.
will force people to diversify their energy economies and basically make the Middle East like a peaceful place, because uh, I'm hearing the names. This one guy's been like, we need to build 700 nuclear power plants, and we drive the price of oil down to $5 a gallon, and we never have to worry about the Middle East ever again.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, I would agree with that. Yeah. And if we're getting control over Venezuela's oil supply on top of it, then we're getting a steady supply in addition to our own. Like now just today they finalized the Keystone pipeline permitting and everything like that too on top of it. Where
I
yeah,
haven't heard that, but I knew that we were looking into doing that again.
yeah, so it seems like again like we're going through kind of I'll just call it birth pangs of a new era right now, like the
Yeah,
pain of it starting. And every time I go to the gas pump, it's like, ugh, geez, it's like Donald, can we wrap this thing up here?
yeah,
But I
that's what.
mean, like, if it does have, and I'm really, I'm always skeptical of jumping on this bandwagon of saying I'll pay higher gas prices if it gets us XXX. That's usually a good way to get taken to the cleaners.
Mm,
That said, if this promise, if it does work out the way we hope,
yeah,
that would be worth it.
yeah.
So,
I mean, for me, I look at this as an American victory, no matter what happens.
oh,
If
interesting.
the
Okay.
worst result is you push their timetable back 10 years, that's good, because a lot is going to happen in the next decade. Where with some of this stuff that I'm seeing coming down, especially with technology, with NASA and the private space industry, I believe we might not have to worry about this kind of stuff in the future. Like Canada having its own, we already have our own spaceport. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, so in Nova Scotia, we built a spaceport, and it's basically we're providing, Canada's providing a place for other people to launch rockets from, because there's only a handful of places around the planet that are commercially successful at doing that. So we built one in Nova Scotia, because what happens is when you lift off a rocket out of Vandenberg or out of Florida, you have to go in certain directions, because you can't go north, because there are populated regions up north. So the only two ways the rockets can go is south from Vandenberg in Florida. And what's happening is that, or Cape Canaveral. So they have to go south over the islands. Well, in Nova Scotia, you can go north or south, and there's no difference because there's no one there.
Okay.
So the rock, like the disposable rocket, when it lands on something, it's landing in the ocean most times, or a swamp in Newfoundland, which is where we're going to build our second commercial port. So Canada's getting really prepared for the whole space race thing. And did you know that the plan is to build by 2028 the first Mars mission, which this will be remote, but we'll be using a nuclear engine to get to Mars in like 6 months to a year, as opposed to the normal 2-year transit time.
Okay. Now, from the way you led into this, it sounds like you're seeing a connection between this and the Middle East, and that situation.
What I'm seeing is,
make that connection for me.
The connection is that we're buying time in the Middle East so that these nuclear programs that we're really putting our efforts into will allow us to bypass the need for oil energy.
Okay, all right. So that ultimately,
a lot of people have been trying to keep us stuck on the oil economy because that's where their money's made. But with nuclear, we can bypass that, and we'll we'll still need the idea that we spent all the last 50 years burning hydrocarbons when there's so much more useful things to do, just so we could keep the Rockefellers rich a little longer is the issue.
So basically, if we put this piece of the puzzle into the place, this means that we could add the oil industry to the Iranians, the Chinese, and frankly, probably the Israelis, of people that are mad at Trump in some degree or another. The Israelis, because I think they want to go much harder at Iran than he's allowing for. I guess my takeaway is, I guess I'm not surprised that he's been shot at 3 times now.
So, I think he said something that like only the consequential presidents get shot at.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, man. That's, and again, like, I just remember when the Iran thing first broke out, and like I had a commenter on my Substack, because I'm one, that had issues, or still does, like with the war. It just like I'm looking at it from the perspective of like I'm a juror at a trial where I don't have to make up my mind now. Like I've got my problems here. The president is like the prosecutor who has to prove his case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
Like let me see. Like I'm still not ready to go in and make the argument, but like I can see some things, and you've added some more too, where I'm kind of like, okay, this is like starting to look like at the very, like, this isn't Iraq 2.0, I guess. And I think that's kind of that's the haunting thing that lingers over everybody's head of just like, are we really doing this all over again?
Yeah, we have the Ready Brigade, you have the 2 Marine units now in theater, and those are just to make options available to the president if he wants to use them, but he hasn't used them. It's more like these are, you know what? I have a bunch of cards. I'm playing poker. You don't know what those cards are, but I could play these cards and break you.
That's right. Yes. Well, and of course, like when he had his, when he completely like went nuts in that run up of how he was going to destroy all of Iranian civilization, and everybody went crazy. And I was just kind of like, guys, we've been watching this movie for 10 years right now. He said it about North Korea. Like, at what point do we realize how it ends?
Yeah, I was just sort of like, he's been trolling you for 10 years and you're still falling for it.
Yeah. Well, and I remember like he was doing an interview with Tucker when he was between presidential terms, and he talked about how when he was having a meeting with Putin, and he made some comment to Putin of like, well, if you try that, there could be a bomb showing up in St. Petersburg the next day. And Tucker said, did he believe you? And Trump said, probably not, but I think he believed it just a little bit. He said, like, that's enough.
Exactly.
So, like that's just enough to, hold back. And I thought, like, that's kind of like when you really talk about things like the art of the deal that we use all with Trump. It's not just that he asks for outrageous things. I mean, that's, everybody knows that part of negotiation. Yeah. It's, he understands these psychological elements that go into it and everything too. And that is where I said, unfortunately, I trust Rich's poll numbers completely. Unfortunately, I seem to be in a minority of even Trump voters sometimes and saying I trust his judgment right now. And, it is what it is, though. And as long as the 4 handle is on the gallon of gas price, it's going to be hard to get people to look past that. And fair enough.
Yeah.
So,
Have you heard of a group of people called Promethean Action?
No.
You should check them out. They're like pointing out a lot of the problems or the solutions to the Trump thing. They're really cheerleading all the fact that all the onshoring jobs are coming back. They talk a lot about the British Empire, but hey, I just kind of look at that as it's the financialists, these evil billionaires, right? Who are trying to they use advanced knowledge to make themselves richer or keep themselves rich.
Mm-hmm.
But they think it's the British Empire. I just call these guys financialists, but or bankers. All wars are bankers' wars, as Smedley Butler put it.
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's who said that.
Yep.
Smedley Butler. Okay, yeah, I've heard that.
You can
too.
find his book online for free. I really would. If there's any book where we should be paying attention to the Israeli lobby, Rich, we should be reading this.
That's writing that down here. Okay. Another. We talked a little bit about Russia's angle in here too, and now I know, like at least several weeks ago, we were starting to lift the sanctions on Russian oil when the strait was first closed. I'm not sure where we're at with that at this point, but I did start to wonder, is like another piece of this that's again, it looks to me like that's a little bit of a hit on China, because if Russia has more customers other than China has to pay a little bit more.
Yeah.
That they don't have that. And no small note, I mean, Zelensky's got to be like dying right now because he's not getting any attention anymore in the world. But if the sanctions, thank you, there we go, yeah. But if the sanctions on Russia, go away, the last piece of leverage NATO, and Zelensky have to keep that waste of a war going disappears. I mean, am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, and we've been waiting to hear from for months now that the Russians are going to prepare for a big offensive. We haven't really seen it yet, but this whole drone war is very confusing for those of us who are used to like big offensives. So it does seem to be kind of a stable thing, but eventually the Ukrainians are going to run out of Ukrainians and the Russians will run over the thing. But I think the whole idea of getting the Russians, what's happening is the Russians sell to the Chinese take some of that oil, and then they sell it to the common market as Chinese oil and take the discount, and they've been using that money to fund their buildup of the Blue Water Navy of theirs. Now, as we've seen in Iran, some of their stuff has not been great, but as Stalin said, quantity has a quality all its own. And the whole idea is to get Russia and Venezuela to stop being these like subsidizers of China. And I just get so frustrated when people are like, well, no, Russia has to withdraw from Ukraine before we'll let them in. I'm like, do you want to lose to China? Is this your plan?
Yeah. Is that the plan? Yeah, that's right. And you talked about drone warfare, and that's interesting too, because again, now I'm pretty much in the firm skeptic camp on the whole stopping Iran from having a nuclear weapon. Like, I'm more interested in these other bigger picture issues. That said, Marco Rubio did say something that caught my eye a few weeks ago when he said that Iran was developing drone capabilities that were getting good enough that if we would have waited until their ballistic missile program was far along enough to be a threat, that they would already have it surrounded and protected by drones. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so basically it's just because the American military industrial complex has been in the past so inefficient. So I was watching an All In podcast with the guy who's doing development technologies, and he's like pushing like the undersecretary of war, and he was like, no, we're trying to catch up. We've had all this money put into the system. We're making drones at about 10 to 20 grand now instead of like at $1 million a pop. So we're getting into that, and we're open sourcing the technology. So we're getting caught up on with what's happening with that, because just how inefficient the U.S. military industrial complex has historically been. So they're getting around those 5 points. But for me, yeah, it was a real threat. This was basically you had to go now or you weren't going to be able to go. And Iran getting a nuke is not the big deal. It's more stopping this thing where we've allowed 25% of the world's energy supply to flow through a 2-mile tunnel. It's just
Okay.
like we need to get around that.
Yeah, and from the sounds of it, and I think you touched on this in your Iran panel group, that Iran has always exerted leverage by their control of the strait as well
Yeah.
too. And so
Everyone's like, they closed the strait. They closed the strait 47 years ago.
yeah, that's right. That's the line you said, and like I was listening, and it was one of those lines that like boom, it's like it just hits you, and suddenly like you just see everything else clearly once you understand that's what's going on.
Yeah.
From the Israeli perspective, and I was saying like I'd like to see Israel go take Iran. I just don't want to, be a part of doing it. Do you think Israel, especially now that the leadership's been knocked out in Iran, could Israel go in and finish this job themselves with maybe
No.
the U.S.?
It's a 90 million people country. Israel's like 9 million people.
That's good.
That's
Okay.
not how.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm missing something on the population side.
Yeah. Basically, I think Trump has been saying to the Iranian people, like, my understanding is CIA and Delta are on the ground. They are trying to train up people. They're making deals. They're making the bribes that need to be done. And there's definitely an interest in revolution, but it's still the IRGC. Like, the regular Iranian army has not been attacked and has stayed out of this entire time.
Oh,
And
really?
there are a million people. There are almost at least 1 million troops in that. It's only IRGC, which is like the Waffen SS, has been targeted in this war.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I hear about the IRGC. I guess I thought that was the Iranian army. So
No, there's an
okay.
entirely civilian army that is, I should say civilian, but there's an entire army that's controlled by the civic government, and they've been staying out of this, except for a few times. Some of their units, like a company here, a company there, or platoon, might go out and with the street protesters because they get kind of stuck. But this is starting to remind me a lot of like the Marcos falling in Philippines.
Okay, all right. That's
Where eventually you have all these street protests, you have all these people, and then regular army units start defecting away from him.
that okay. So yeah, that's what would get around the problem of 80% of the population being unarmed against the army, is if you start to get army defections.
Yeah, the regular army.
Okay, wow. That's so what is your overall understanding of who's actually running Iran right now? There's got to be a huge internal fight. I mean, we kind of
Yeah, there's a lot of belief that there's a lot of warlords out there, and that's one of the problems. And that was the thing what the Israelis really blew it for at the beginning, when they blew up the Ayatollah and all those people that were gathered in one spot. And Trump, I guess, realized, oh shit, Israel has its own agenda here. They're not playing ball, and they've cracked down on really champing down on Israel with Bibi and those guys afterwards. And they're like, we were hoping to negotiate with some of those guys. So some of those guys were moderates, and you went and killed them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the Iranians did also like decentralize their military command, which is not how Arabs normally operate. Of course, they're Persians, they're not Arabs, but they're willing to trust their individual commanders. So this led to a lot of uncoordinated attacks. There's a lot of warlords out there. Like, can you be Evil Incorporated gathered around a table of the IRGC leaders, and it's like, okay, Bob, what did you do today? Well, I fired a couple missiles and I hit some targets in Saudi Arabia. Okay, great. Yeah, we really appreciated the propaganda win. Joe, what did you do today? Well, I tried to fire 4 rockets at Israel, but they all got shot down. Well, Joe, you're very underperforming today. So there's a bunch of that kind of ideas. Yeah. Like, I want to be impressive with I'm a warlord. I want to get the best press coverage. Is it better for me to fire off my missiles at a soft target versus a hard target?
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like if you're a defense lawyer, do you take the guy that's probably guilty and the most you can do is negotiate it down, or do you take the easier case or something like that, just to pad the one loss record, so to speak? So
yeah.
Okay. All right, just have another question moving down. Yeah, of course. Yeah, regarding I think the big money question that's kind of roiling MAGA and everything here right now. What is your take on how big the Israeli influence is over U.S. policy, including this administration?
I think it's pretty important, but I think that this will be the last administration where it will have influence.
Okay.
I think
I
a
mean,
future Democrat or a JD Vance or even Marco Rubio is going to be pushing back on these guys. I think this is the last administration where AIPAC will be the Jewish lobby, as the book we're going to be covering soon. I just think that they've had their day. Christian Zionism is going to fade out because of the boomers are passing away.
okay.
And I just think I don't think it'll be the end of Israel or anything like that, but that influence will it's too transparent now. We have too much books, too many people. The Democrats certainly are rejecting it hard, and I think we'll see the same thing with it. Like, I don't much exactly like it, but we're seeing a Roman Catholic revival in the United States, and
Hey, I'm loving it. So.
you can love it. I'm Anglican, so I don't.
Okay.
But I think we're seeing that, and so this influence that the Christian Zionist movement that came out of, like, especially out of the early Carter, then hit the floor running under Reagan, that era is just disappearing into the background. And so as people leave and people look at, like, as more people read the Bible and say, no, Israel's the church, it's not a country.
I mean, generationally, I think what you said is indisputable. And I think, I mean, I don't know. I know Rich has a book coming out in September. I don't know how much of it is going to touch on the Israel question in particular, but I'm sure it's going to hit a lot of those same themes of like how the next generation is looking at things, and that they're ready to break down all of these old ways of thinking. That said, I mean, if Israel actually holds the level of power that they do, which is basically to control people independent of what public opinion thinks. And by the way, I'm basically saying this is the hardcore, I'm going to say conspiracy theory, but I hate that word, but everybody knows what I mean. So, like, if it's that bad, that like if Israel, like I've heard, like Tucker Carlson has alluded to, Israel's threatened to use nuclear weapons in the Middle East if, like, the U.S. doesn't do what they want. I mean, those are pretty serious things that, like, aren't just going to, like, any president, like AOC could become president tomorrow, heaven forbid. And like, she's going to be stuck with having to deal with that. JD will be stuck having to deal with that. I mean, so what's your understanding of Israel's power in that regard to basically to control people enough to override public opinion?
I think, like I said, I think it's waning out. That's just how I feel about it. Now, the nuclear weapons thing, you're a very small country. How secure are your nuclear weapons?
That's a good point. Yeah.
I often do a Friday show with one of my co-hosts named Wolfhound, and he's pointed out that it would be very easy to seize all the French nuclear weapons, like, because they had it stuck on this there's main sub bases on a peninsula, and he's like, I could drop a couple of Marine regiments and go in there and just cut the French off from their own nukes. And the British nukes are partly funded by the U.S., so they don't have independent nuclear weapons. So I haven't looked into, or maybe I'll have to ask Wolfhound how we would secure the Israelis' nukes, but it's not impossible to think that a small country like that and the proper forces go in, maybe you could secure the Israeli nukes if they get too uppity.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So, like, now again, so the question of basically, did Trump do this because Israel railroaded him into it? Now, my take on this, and you can give me your assessment of that, is that Trump's defenders have put forth plenty of clips of him going all the way back to 2013, like demanding that we do something about Iran. And I remember
I think it goes all the way back to 1979. We have to remember he was a kid then.
I know that's one of the things I mentioned on my Substack. I said, keep in mind, like, he was around the age then that a lot of us were when the Iraq War happened. And those are very formative events that they do not leave you, anytime soon. So, like, good, bad, or indifferent, like, it does explain, like, his worldview. And I remember even, like, right before he returned to office, and I was doing a video on my Substack, and I was laying out, like, possible things that might happen. And I said, like, I have a feeling he's going to try something in Iran. I said, because I think it's the one area where he actually does have a little bit of neocon in him.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
there's a
that's
little bit
definitely
of
a good way
intersection
to
there.
describe it.
Yeah. So like where I would probably have like this is where my concern would come in. And I think, Joe Kent did an excellent job at his interview with Tucker at laying it out. Like when the way he described it was the way information gets laundered in to the president is did they take a pre-existing area of agreement and exaggerate it to give it a heightened priority with Trump, which I would say is very different than saying they railroaded him into it. And it's also like, but it's also acknowledging the reality of influence. It's like if you just shade something a little bit, you can give it a heightened importance in somebody's eyes. Because I guess the one thing that, and I know Steve Bannon has asked this question too, that I kind of have is like, set aside the merits or lack thereof of the plan. Like, why now? Why would, like, not just this presidential term, but why, when you have this element of the coalition that Rich talks about regularly, that's so fragilely connected to MAGA, so distrustful of Republicans over this subject in particular, why do you start that? Now, like, and again, maybe there's a good answer to it. Maybe, maybe you could make the case, but it's a fair question to ask. And I think that's kind of the question that goes through my mind. And I think the whole question of information laundering, it at least points to it, and so what's your take there?
I think he wants to be a truly historical president, even though he's like one of the he and Grover Cleveland are the only two non-back-to-back presidents. You would think that would be enough. I would never have advised him to take this course of action, though I understand it.
Yes,
I think, like I said earlier,
that's where I'm in the I'm trying to understand it phase here. Right
now. First off, it's a limit. We live in this world because of World War II, where if we don't get total 100% victory, then we were losers. In this war, America is the winner. It is just a matter of judging the scale of victory.
Okay.
So most wars throughout history are limited wars for limited objectives, and we've forgotten that. America has totally gotten, at minimum, a limited victory, and hopefully we'll get the total. But I'm like, it's politics. It's like in politics. You form a coalition, and you hope to get 65 to 75% of what you want accomplished during a term. But when it comes to war, we want 100%. And at this point, I'm looking at it as a 70% victory for the United States and for the world, personally.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. Now, why did he do it right now? I think he was high on the success of how well Venezuela worked out. And I think he also made some other, like, he knew that if he didn't do this, his predecessor wouldn't do it, or his successor wouldn't do it. J.D. Vance would not make the move. Tulsi Gabbard, who I think is going to be the nominee.
Interesting, because she's my preferred choice for vice president, like a Vance Gabbard ticket. That's what I would pick.
I think I just watched her at the Turning Point USA event, and I'm like, oh my God, she's going to run. But we're just looking at a situation where that's what we're dealing like. I think Trump realized this was the only time that it could be done, is if he did it now. And I was watching Tucker get interviewed by the New York Times people, and Tucker said, like, Trump didn't look like he really was gung-ho or one of the things, but he did say, don't worry, it will work out.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I'm like, oh, the old Bismarck quote, God blesses drunks, fools in the United States of America.
I remember that quote. Yeah, that's well, and Trump really does plan everything out. Like I finally sat down and I read The Art of the Deal for the first time, since everybody quotes it all the time, which, by the way, has added to my aggravation at the professional media, if it were possible to get any more, because I'm kind of like, after you read this book, it's like suddenly everything that you watch him do makes sense. It's like you see this and I'm kind of like, okay, like I get that I probably waited too long to read the book, but like if you're a paid professional columnist and this is the best-selling book of the President of the United States on how he negotiates, how do you not consider it your professional obligation to read the book
Mm,
and explain it? But that's just another event on my part there. But to a point you earlier said, like I definitely think Trump is trying to completely reorder the global chessboard, and I think he's willing to absorb short-term political pain, for the
yeah,
sake of doing that. And if that is his priority, like I think that is the correct priority. Like there are too many things. Again, set aside what you think about each individual piece and how he's reacting. We have to go for it now. Like, and he's doing it on
yeah.
trade, which is something that's I'm particularly passionate about, and
Mm,
really is as good as he was in his first term on trade. I mean, this has just been off the charts fantastic what he's doing
mm,
the second time around. Like the move in Venezuela, is again I think proven to be brilliant. I was like with all of these things, I'm always a little skeptical when they start, but even like right after it was over, it's kind of like, okay, that's just like I literally went to bed one night and woke up the next morning and like, oh, we have Maduro, and like that was kind of the end of it. It's like, and now we have the oil, and now the people of Venezuela are actually going to have a functioning economy, and they
yep.
won't have to pour all our criminals into the United States. It's like
Mm,
it's kind of like everybody but Maduro is winning here in this whole
mm,
situation. So yeah, so I mean, I definitely feel good that I think like he does have a plan. He is ordering the global chessboard. He's completely going to be a historic president, and yeah, just now it's just like, okay, Donald, I hope you know what you're doing each step of the way,
yeah.
because these are high risk moves. So
Yep. We're at the casino, and are we rolling the craps dice? I just remember.
I remember saying to a friend, I said, like, basically the old casino owner looked at all the chips he had on his side of the table and just shoved them in. He said, I'm going to either exceed Ronald Reagan or I'm going to fall below George W. Bush in the realm
Yeah.
of Republican politicians. It's what I mean, like there is no middle ground left anymore at this point. So
Mm,
yeah, trying to, oh, yeah. Before we wrap up here, Russia, Ukraine. Of course, seems hard to believe that was the topic that drove everything for a few years there, while we were
yeah.
insanely escalating that. And it feels to me like it's just. I'm not going to say drifted off. I mean, I know you still have the people in Ukraine suffering as this invasion goes on because Zelensky and NATO won't like face reality. But it certainly seems like tensions are drastically de-escalated. Now, is that just because it's not in the headlines, or it seems like Trump and Putin, have a little, I'll call it a détente, whatever,
Yeah.
that things aren't escalating any further. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
I would say that. Look, we allowed the Ukraine war become such a big focus in a way that we never would have done during Vietnam or even Korea, where you have like active fighting between different sides, and the Ukraine war got kind of close to nuclear on several occasions. But it's like just have to understand, you know what? This is what we it's Vietnam. Like, it's bad. It's going to suck. We might lose it. I think we have lost it because
Mhm.
we didn't take the steps necessary. Like, the problem is I've maintained from the beginning is that we never thought we would ever have to fight a war like this ever again. Without, we just assumed we'd go 90 days, run out of stuff, and go nuclear. And the
Okay.
Russians reminded us that, yeah, no, the only place I could think of that we actually thought might be a sustained multi-year conflict was North and South Korea, which we did prep for. But
Okay. All right.
yeah, it's just a matter of like we just always assumed we never have to fight a big war like this because after a certain amount of time, someone would take such an option and we'd have to go destroy the planet.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's why we built our entire defense industry. Sure, Coldeck, go ahead, ask a question.
Yeah. So for now again, so looking at this from the perspective of NATO, Trump is kind of dropping none too subtle hints that like maybe we should just pull the plug on NATO. And again, like I'm sure there's a certain amount of negotiating ploy going on with that, but this is my fervent hope that that he will actually follow through and do that.
Yeah. Well,
In
he
light
pulled
of
out. I don't know if he's pulling out of NATO. He pulled out the one Ready Brigade that was based in
it's out of
NATO,
Germany.
but
Yeah.
this is a brigade that's supposed to be deployed anywhere around the planet at any time. So,
Oh, okay.
in 3 days, that's the whole point of this particular brigade. Why does you need to have it based in Germany?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the thing because I was watching a podcast with this Colonel Watson, Colonel Watson woman who basically pointed that out to me and to the rest of the audience that it was the Ready Brigade, and that when you have a unit based in Germany, that it creates a whole lot of jobs around it, like restaurants and translators and schools and all this stuff that supports the German economy. And it's like, why not have that just support the American economy instead?
Yeah.
Which is why they moved it back. But people are like freaking out. It's like, the United States pulled out a lot of troops during the 90s. This is not a big deal.
Okay. All right. I'm going to say that's too bad because I was hoping it was more significant than it was that we were pulling out.
It may well be. I do think, like, when I'm looking at my X feed and I have Ari Fleischer, George W. Bush's press secretary, on my X feed saying, we need to pull out of NATO. I'm like, whoa.
Did he really? Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
He was like, why aren't their ships helping us in the strait? Now, in a lot of my viewpoint, we don't necessarily want them in the strait because they'll screw things up a bit. But yeah, there is this, when you have someone who was in the George W. Bush administration slamming NATO,
Yeah.
the conversation has changed.
Yeah. And I think I heard somewhere, and it might even have been somebody on your Iran panel that said, like, it's a good idea to pressure test your allies. Like,
That was Richard.
Okay. All right. There we go.
He's when he was promoted to major in the United States Air Force and strapped on his new pin, that was the day he decided to resign.
Oh, really? Why?
He's like, he did not want to climb up the ranks. The problem with the United States military is you have Goldwater Nichols, and it's promote or done. So he was happy to be a captain for the rest of his life. But in the U.S. military, it's like, if you don't keep chasing your promotion, they're going to remove you out of the military. Versus in the Canadian or the British military, where basically you want to be the staff sergeant, you're a great staff sergeant, well, just keep increasing your pay as you get in seniority. You don't have to be promoted up the ranks all the time. We recognize that some people are like General Milley. Apparently he was a brilliant battalion commander.
Yeah. No,
he couldn't stay a battalion commander?
Yeah, and that explains why. Because I have reached the point, unfortunately, where just when I see like the generals in Washington D.C., I'm like, okay, yeah, I really don't trust you. I will trust the guy who's a private, and that is kind of out there on the front line. That's the one I'll say thank you for your service to. So
yeah. So Koldek in the chat has asked a question. What do we think of Carney and Armenia getting close to the European Union and sending $270 million to Ukraine? Well, first off, I will say you got to understand Saskatchewan and Manitoba. I'm of Polish descent.
That's
10 to 15% of the Canadian populace is either Polish or Ukrainian. And when you learn that, that's an electoral decision where we hate the Russians for very good reasons, and Polish and Ukrainian diaspora is a big reason why we're going to send $270 million to the Ukraine. As much as I think it's dumb, but that's where we exist. It's you want to get elected, you have to support certain national groups, and that's the national groups that end up here. What do I think of Carney in Armenia? Look, he just fundamentally doesn't understand how the country he was born in works. Canada is all about the provinces. Becoming prime minister of Canada is not that important because the provinces make all the decisions here. Ottawa exists so that the provinces have someone to blame when things get screwed up. And the fact is that most Canadians don't know this kind of stuff unless they're a little bit more into the politics of stuff and know the history of our country. So Carney, I don't think, knows the history of our country. And he keeps going in and saying, basically, Dan, Canada is like the United States pre the Civil War.
Okay, yeah.
Where the states have a lot more say on how things are run than the central government. So we have a very weak central government, which is very unique.
I didn't know that. That's
it's very unique for the British system because, you know, in the United Kingdom, Parliament is supreme. I'm not too sure how it works in Australia and New Zealand, but in Canada, the provinces are supreme. If you want to have your city charter, that's approved by the provinces. You want to do, my premier, Doug Ford, wants to basically build a port on James Bay and drive a pipeline all the way up to James Bay from cooperating provinces. He could do it. And there's nothing that Mark Carney in Ottawa can do to stop him. We don't have, like, for example, the Federal Department of Education. That doesn't exist here.
Okay, all right. That's
every Department of Education is run by a province, and they jealously guard their prerogatives.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And another one is like, you know how you have all these election NGO groups running around? So in 2015, the Tides Foundation decides to do a test run case in Canada. They wanted to support. They thought Justin Trudeau would be their best representative. So they ran a test bed case of 25 ridings, which are like Congress seats. And they ran 25 things there, and they set up all their NGOs and ran them, and then they helped get Trudeau elected. Though it doesn't matter, he won by such a landslide, it didn't matter. So the fact that he helped them out. And then they held a press conference where they explained how they did all their illegal election interference. And Elections Canada is like, the only ones who get to screw with Canadian elections is us. So this was our civil servants. And they went to Trudeau and they demanded he let them extradite the board of the Tides Foundation to Canada so they could face charges.
Okay.
Now, charges is like the max charge would have been like a year in jail.
Okay.
But Trudeau is like, well, I'm not going to extradite the Tides board. But for like to face like a few thousand, probably most likely a court would give you like the max fine. But Elections Canada and their provincial counterparts have basically used Tides Foundation's press conference as a way to target all those groups and wipe them out. They were like decertified as charities. Most of their leadership has a personal fine against them, like fine like $50,000 if you don't for elections interference. And guess what the statute of limitations of election interference in Canada is?
What?
Nothing. There is no statute of limitations.
Really? So it's like murder in the United States.
Yeah.
It's like
if you interfere in a Canadian election,
wow, you're literally a killer.
You're literally a killer. You're literally screwed. Like the Tides Foundation, I don't know. I'm sure some of those board members have come to Canada and weren't arrested by the RCMP by Elections Canada, but maybe not. But good God, when I asked Grok that, and he's like, "There's no statute of limitations on election interference." I'm like, "Holy crap!" People don't understand. Canada's founded by, or like English Canada is founded by the people who lost the Revolutionary War, and they said, "We're never doing that again."
Yeah,
and much like the Jews, never again for the Holocaust, for the Canadian civil service and the Canadian politicians and the Canadian system. It's all about we will never allow another American Revolution because we lost that one. We're never letting that happen here again.
That's it. Well, that covers all the questions I had there. This is a great catch up. I kind of feel like I got a little bit more depth to some of my theories and knowledge and everything. Especially the thing that you said that is really I'm really taking out of this is just how the U.S. mindset on war has just been warped since World War II, of thinking that it's got to be this smash, wipeout. But like most wars are fought for limited objectives. Like that's just it just seems so historically sound and like common sense and counter to our political culture, as it's been for a while. So
okay, well, yeah, we've been streaming about an hour. We've had a couple of questions from people on the channel. JP, who is also in the chat, he's also another member of the book club. So hopefully we'll see you back there again, because I know Catherine and Rich have been struggling without having a third person to read for the rest of us.
There hasn't been a third person to step up as a reader or anything
I don't know.
What's going on here? Come on.
Okay. Well, everyone, if you like this kind of stuff and you want to see more, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. This is the Spy Guy and Dan signing off.